make it fun.
Fun is what we're all about. Straight No Chaser Talk Radio.
What fun at a party!
This is Straight No Chaser Talk Radio. We're just getting started. Straight No Chaser Talk Radio.
He's drinking that with no chaser.
This is Straight No Chaser Talk Radio. We're just getting started. Straight No Chaser Talk Radio.
He's drinking that with no chaser.
This is Straight No Chaser Talk Radio. We're just getting started. Straight No Chaser Talk Radio.
He's drinking that with no chaser.
Evening, everyone. It's your boy B, and we're back for another episode of Straight No Chaser, where we never dilute the issues, we only serve the hard stuff. And of course, we have the man, the myth, the legend with us this evening, Maestro Dr. T. How you doing, Doc?
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you, Brother B. How you doing?
Oh, man, we're doing great, doing great. And tonight we are talking about a subject that's near and dear to, particularly to us girl dads, and also to all of those wonderful female athletes that are gracing our televisions and billboards and magazines across the country. Tonight we're going to talk about women's sports. Has it finally evolved? And to help us do that, we have two broadcasting veterans. We have Chris Murray, the host of Chris Murray on WURD in Philadelphia. And of course, we have Ryan Adams, who's the host of Beware the Day podcast, both of whom are veteran sports broadcasters and have been doing this for a long time. We couldn't have two better folks to help us discuss this topic this evening. And gentlemen, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to have you. And of course, you know, we'll just jump right into it. You know, we saw the LSU game and Iowa game, and that broke records the other night. Millions of people were watching it, you know, not only nationally, but internationally. And, you know, years ago, you just didn't really pay attention to women's sports. That was almost like an afterthought. Or if it was on ESPN or one of the other sports networks, it was almost like background noise, and which was certainly certainly very disrespectful and dismissive of the tremendous talent that existed and still exists in women's sports. But it just kind of showed how dismissive people were of that level of effort that we're seeing. But now it appears that things are starting to change. And so we just wanted to have a conversation with two sports veterans about, number one, why is this happening? Why is it happening now? And what do you think are some of the long-term possibilities for women's sports? And we'll just turn it over to you guys and Dr. T.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead, Brother Chris. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I covered women's basketball. Covered Temple when Dawn Staley was the head coach at Temple, and it has been a climb. But the basketball has always been exciting and whatnot. The sport itself has always been exciting. It's just that I think a lot of, males are starting to take notice, and people are starting to basically, I think there's storylines in the game that we didn't have years ago. There are basically storylines. The Angel Reese's of the world, Dawn Staley's personality in terms of, having unbeaten teams. You're starting to see the marketing thing kind of happen too. It's a lot. And, I'm glad to see it because, and before we turn it over to you guys, I got to tell you a story, Mike, and I think we shared this morning.
Sure.
We talked. I told you of a time while I was watching Maryland back. I want to say in 2006 when women won national championship. So
that's right.
I'd watch the game, and I'm from Maryland. I'm a huge Maryland fan, and I saw Christy Tolliver hit that huge shot to send it into overtime. Great game. Maryland wins. So I go down to cover the Sixers the next day, and I said, man, that women's game was really tremendous. All of a sudden, was a bit of awkward silence in the room, and they said, one of the guys from AP said, "You watch women's basketball?" And it was just like, whoa, come on, it's a great sport, but it's evolved a long way, and I mean that's my experience with it.
Sure. Ryan?
Well, yeah, I definitely agree with Chris. The storylines are what's driving the nation's hunger for women's sports in general, and in this case, women's collegiate basketball. And I think the sports media in general has played a big role in kind of amplifying the talent. Not only the talent, but like Chris said, the storylines. Like ABC, was it up close and personal? That was their slogan during the Olympic Games. So the casual fan is attracted by those storylines, and of course, when you have a coach like Kim Mulkey, 2 stories, one in the Washington Post, one in the Los Angeles Times, one of which was highly abrasive, adds to the mystique and the curiosity. Well, let's see what these two teams are like. And then you got Caitlin Clark, who's rewriting the history book. You got good versus evil, Catholics versus convicts, Angel versus,
That's right.
That's what the media love. They love to drive that good versus evil narrative. And now that Angel Reese, I read that she announced in Vogue that she's going to the WNBA.
Sure.
So the Clark versus Reese narrative is going to go into the WNBA, similar to what happened when a young man named Larry Bird and a young man named Magic Johnson came into the NBA. Will this rivalry have the same effect on the WNBA as it has as the Bird Magic rivalry had on the NBA? That remains to be seen. But I'm excited. I watched the game LSU versus Iowa. I'm definitely going to be watching the women's Final Four because you got, UConn, which is a perennial Final Four participant. You got NC State. You got Iowa, and of course, you got South Carolina, and they remain undefeated. So there's more storylines in store, and I'm here for all of them.
Well, you brought up an interesting point, and you alluded to it also, Chris, and that was the whole good versus evil thing that was put out there. There was. They were even talking about that on television a couple of days ago, how Angel Reese was demonized, from LSU versus, some of her other, colleagues and opponents. And, again, even when you're looking at the dismissive treatment that women's athletics have felt all these years, now that it's becoming popular, now, so we're evolving into, okay, we got to do the whole good versus evil thing, and the obvious double standard. For example, everybody likes it in the sports world when you have, I'm dating myself. Remember you had like big trash talkers like Hollywood Henderson and all those guys that just talk major trash. Everybody loved it. Or, when Ali used to talk trash, or, you just had major trash talkers. And in the NBA, you had Isaiah Thomas talking trash and Lambeer talking trash. And, just everybody was eating it up. But when the ladies start doing it, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I caught Jemele Hill's comments. She was on the Dan Le Batard show. She touched upon that very topic. Mm-hmm. She said that you know, it's not ladylike to talk trash and to get in people's faces, and that's another one of those narratives. And you're starting to see that is no longer the case. Women are just as aggressive, just as competitive, and they're gonna talk trash, and that's just the way it is. Because you got to look, and of course, it's also the culture. Angel Reese is from Baltimore. All right.
There you go.
Lay down, okay?
That's it.
And if that hurts the fragile feelings of those people in the heartland, you know, Iowa, it's the heartland. It's supposed to be representative of America, which it is not. Okay, I just want to make that point. It is not representative.
Ain't that many brothers in Iowa?
Okay, I mean, I'm like, you know, they need to put that big girl panties on and stop being such crybabies, man. Angel Reese, she's a phenomenal talent. She gonna get in your face and she gonna score her points. So I have no issue with females being as aggressive on the court as their male counterparts.
I think women have always talked trash in that sport. I think that women like the men will talk that trash. I mean, you saw that during the game. It's just that we live in a country where people still get offended when black people do it, and when a black woman who is confident and all this other stuff, you know, is going to basically say, "Look, I'm one of the best people out there." That's fine. And the thing is, and I know Caitlin Clark talks a little bit of trash too. I mean, she says some things, and so I don't mind women talk. I mean, sucks women, and I hate, and I'm gonna say this: women are better at trash talking than we are, than men are. I'm just saying they are. We've been around it. Women talk trash, whether it's on the athletic field or court, or just at the black and gold ball or something. You know, women will go at each other in that way. So women, like I said, women are better at it than men. But you know, and the thing about people, I remember Dawn Staley used to play with the guys in North Philly, from what I understand, and the guys would talk trash, and she would come back at them. I mean, that's the game. But I'm not mad at it, because if that gives women's basketball more attention, then that's fine. I mean, I think that, you know, that it's still a sport. It's still, you know, it's still fun. And maybe people will get out of this whole thing about women, because women play the game better fundamentally than a lot of the guys do. And women are now developing personalities in the sports. Do you know? Can you recognize any of the stars from the men's Final Four this year? I mean, does anybody watch college basketball? Only time I'll get into it is if I'm covering it, you know, and that's my beat. But nobody really, you know, you're hard pressed to find outside of Zach Edey from Purdue who's going to be the number one, you know, big man in this draft, or number one superstar in this draft. You had to go to Europe to find that. The men's game has lost a little thunder right now. If I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong.
You got Tristan Newton for Connecticut. Of course, he's from this part of the country. He's from El Paso, so El Paso is locked into the Final Four. Plus, his father's an Alpha, so all the Alphas should be locked into the Final Four this time around. Tristan Newton and you got my man, Dr. T is like, oh man, here we go. 3 against 1. I know. All is fair in love and war, right? But so you got, but like you said, those names are not easily recognizable. That's why the women's game is like, you can almost name them: Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. It's just been
Juju.
It's more intriguing. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Dr. T.
Well, I'm a baseball guy, so
hey, all right.
You know,
my man.
I missed the last game because I was at Universal Studios with my seniors. So, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna miss this game because you know, I'm not really watching the young men that are playing. I mean, it seems like there's more hype with the women. What I don't like, and you know, Ryan talked about it. You know, you have good and bad. So who's going to be the good and who's the bad? And it's also, you know, sometimes it's us that are the bad people, because last year we've seen Caitlin Clark. I mean, she's phenomenal.
Great.
Watching the highlights, I'm like, how in the world is she getting those threes? But I remember, like last year, Caitlin Clark did the thing in front of her face,
Yeah.
and oh, what a competitor, blah blah blah. And then Angel Reese did it. Oh, that's classless, and they just drug her through the mud, which I don't think it's fair. In this country, maybe across the world, there is a double standard. It's been there forever, where guys can do certain things and women can't. I think that I love what I see with the women, because I have daughters, and they're more independent. They don't have to go in the kitchen, if you will. Reminiscent of our 2 segments ago, our housewives segment, but right. I like to see that they're independent. They're making money. I'm not too familiar with the NIL, but I just Googled it. Angel Reese, she made $1 million, and as a college student, that's great. And I'm not sure about Caitlin Clark, but some of these young ladies are making money, and the only thing that I say, if that was my daughter, you better graduate. That's all I need you to do. So no, I think it's good watching the highlights. I think they get more press because Chris said it, or excuse me, Ryan said it. It reminds me of Larry Bird when I was in high school, and Dr. J, or not Dr. J, Magic. I'm sorry. See, I told you I wasn't a basketball guy, but this is going to continue, and I think this is good.
And guys, what do you think was the catalyst of this, I guess, renaissance in women's sports? And can you point back to a singular moment or a series of moments that made people say, wow, man, these ladies are really doing their thing. We need to check this out.
I think
I'm going to say, go ahead. No,
I think it was
last year. Go ahead, man. Go ahead, Rock. Go ahead, man.
I think we could probably go back to last year's game between LSU and Iowa. The whole, that kind of bled over in this year's rematch. So if I had to put my finger on one particular event, I think that's where I'd put it. Chris?
I would say I want to say it was 2016 or 2017 or 18. I can't really remember. All as I get older, everything comes together. I want to say it was when Mississippi State upset UConn, who had maybe they were unbeaten and they were favored to win a national championship. That was the first of Dawn Staley's titles and whatnot, because they played in the championship game. But I remember coming back home and watching that game. I think I was at a conference. I was at a NABJ regional conference in Baltimore, oddly enough. And I remember I went upstairs, in the hotel room where I was. I said, I got to see the rest of this game, because I've been getting alerts on my phone saying that UConn and Mississippi State were playing a close game. And I think UConn might have been unbeaten, or they had won like so many championships in a row that basically that was huge. I mean, and it was like a last second shot or something like that. And I was like, man, this was, and I had to watch the national championship game because I wanted to see where this story was going to end. And then you had and then of course you had people like Brittany Griner and players who were really good in the fact that her situation when she got detained in Russia, that also kind of became a cause celeb too, even though she's in WNBA. And to me, I always think that the sport end of it is much more exciting, because I think because that was the thing. I mean, I like women's college basketball because, like I said, I covered it, and I'm always curious about, just the game. I love the games. I mean, I covered high school sports in Prince George's County, And I remember like Elizabeth Seton versus St. John's and how that game went back and forth. And, you know, that was one of the most, it was a girl, I think her name was Christina Black. And she put on one of the most best performances I've seen at the high school level, boys or girls, just by the heart that she showed. She had a bad back. She had like a big three and then hit the game-winning bucket. I mean, it was just, or through the pass that led to the game-winning bucket. And it was like the whole gym. It was at St. John's in D.C. and all the Seton side went nuts. And I was saying to myself, wow, I mean, and this will probably get ignored because it's girls basketball. But when you see games like that, Christy Tolliver years ago, Mississippi State hit that three. To me, I'm like, what took people so long? It's like people telling me that baseball is boring. When did baseball become boring? Baseball was never boring to me and whatnot. But never. But but that's the thing. And I'm like, where were you guys? These are some exciting moments, even in the 80s. In women's basketball, there were great moments. A girl from Carolina, I forgot her name, from Carolina won the national championship on a last second shot. There were some moments, because it's women's basketball, we ignored it. Sexism in American society.
Right.
Ryan, your thoughts?
I pulled that game up on my phone, and UConn was undefeated coming into that game. And Mississippi State beat them on a buzzer beater in overtime to win. And I remember that game. I do. But yeah, I think women's basketball in particular has always had superstars. I mean, Sue Bird, Christy Tolliver, Diana Taurasi. We can't forget about Lisa Leslie. And you go back a little further to Cheryl Miller. I mean, Cheryl Foote. Shamik Holdsclaw, exactly. And it's just been ignored. And it's just this particular, we were at that point in the history of the sport where we had these two polarizing figures in college, in women's college basketball, and the United, and the whole country is like captivated, and it's phenomenal. And I hope that the WNBA can monetize this rivalry and hopefully drive up their attendance. And because I don't think their salaries will ever touch, an NBA salary, but they can probably fill some seats. Like, I know if Caitlin Clark comes to Las Vegas to play the Aces, Michael, I know you're going to be there.
Yes, sir.
And
yes,
BC going to be there. So, yes, hey, it's an exciting time for women's sports. Now, I know we're talking about basketball tonight, but remember when the women won the World Cup soccer?
Yep.
And the talk of the town was, this is going to launch. I mean, soccer is going to spread like wildfire. It's gonna, and that did not happen.
Right.
So hopefully this particular situation, we got Angel Reese on one side, Caitlin Clark. As long as they don't end up on the same team, I mean, it'll be great. I don't think they're going to end up on the same team. I know they're both lottery picks, so
right.
Sure, they're definitely going, in the top 10.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Can you guys kind of explain to us, is there any difference in the whole lottery system in the WNBA than the NBA? And where do you think these two top tier players, and I know there's a lot of other talented players out there on the that are playing in the women's basketball for the NCAA, but in particular, where do you think these two may end up, just based on what you're seeing and reading and watching?
Well, I gotta claim my ignorance. I'm not familiar with how the WNBA does their draft. I know the draft usually takes place like the day after the national championship. Isn't that right, Chris?
Or a few weeks after. I think maybe a week or two after that. Yeah.
Right. And I guess the team with the worst record has the first pick, like they do in the NBA.
Yeah,
that's how it's supposed to be.
Right. So, I think that's what it is. I admit I follow the WNBA and I didn't get into the whole. I never got into the whole draft. I think I will this year as a reporter. I think at this point we kind of have to, because I think that because I want to see these guys beyond college and whatnot. And I think maybe this is our call to start looking at the women's game. And the problem with WNBA, I still don't like when they play because the summertime and people are usually out, and you're going all over the place. I wonder about that. But maybe. But then again, you know what? If they can make I don't know, poker a big thing on ESPN and whatnot, if they can do that,
is there a reason why the WNBA doesn't run concurrently with the NBA?
Well, that was my next question for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because college basketball runs concurrently with professional sports. Why not the women's game?
I that's a good question because I do think that, because let's face it, the summertime, usually when I'm in summertime, I am in baseball mode. I'm not gonna lie, right. I'm in baseball mode, mm-hmm. and if there's a compelling boxing match, I'm gonna try to be there for that too. But I still like boxing. I mean, and I'm not a violent person, but I still love the sport. But the thing is that WNBA, it's hard to watch it in the summertime and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Although there's some of us who get our football fix watching Canadian football, and I don't know if that's anybody in this room.
Or the
yeah, something like that. But I'm just saying that I just wish that I like to see it run concurrent. I mean, although I watch the pros now more than anything else. It used to be the reverse. I used to love college basketball on the men's side. Now I watch the NBA, but I think it could work. But I think that those who market the sport got to figure out how to make it work. I mean, you gotta make it work, and you gotta put it in a situation where, I mean, hey, if they were smart, have a doubleheader, have a men's game, on, and they used to do that in the old NBA. They would have these doubleheaders in these cities and whatnot to promote the sport. So why not do that? I mean, that's just my idea. I don't know.
Sure. Dr. T, we got any comments?
No, I just received everything. I mean, there's a lot of good ideas. Do you think, gentlemen, that it helps if you have a winning team? Because I know the Aces, it was pretty much sold out a lot. Mm-hmm. So could that be one of the reasons why people may or may not go to these games?
Yeah, that, and there's a lot of competition for the entertainment dollar. And it's amazing that the Aces are doing so well in Las Vegas, where you have a number of choices. You got, you got the hockey team. I guess the A's are going to be moving to Las Vegas. So you got baseball in Las Vegas. So the fact that a women's team is doing so well is remarkable. It helps to have a winning record. Winning does solve everything. If you're not winning games, people don't want to come see a losing product. So absolutely, winning is definitely plays a role.
And we had a comment in the chat. One of our listeners said that we're now starting to see the fruit of labor from Title IX. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that's true. I would say that that's true in the sense that that a lot more money is being invested into these programs, and in some places it's a moneymaker. South Carolina, it's a moneymaker. At Tennessee, definitely a moneymaker. So people have figured it out, so to speak. But I think it is kind of a residual effect of Title IX, and that we needed it. We needed it because our girls need a place to play. Like I say, you talk about girl dads and everything. If I had a daughter, if I ever had a daughter and she wanted to play sports, and stuff, I would be the first. I'd be on the bandwagon. Heck, I'd let her play football if she wanted to, because I love sports, and I love sports. The one thing I miss about sports for me personally is I can't play touch football anymore or pick up basketball. Not that I was ever good in basketball, but I just like the spirit of, I don't know, running up and down the court and everything. So, I was terrible.
Drama of athletic competition.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you hit us with an interesting segue, Chris. One of the questions that I had for both you guys was, do you see female athletes breaking into the NFL in the next 5 to 10 years to a point where you've got some female coaches and players that are dominant in the league?
Female punters, maybe. Female place kickers, maybe. But that's as far as I'm willing to go, because football is just an entirely different.
Football is a hard sport for men.
I mean, I know they changed the rules for the kickoffs, but still, it's just, I don't see it. Just because.
And the reason I ask that, because I'm sure you guys are on social media at some point in time, just based on what you do. And I've seen clips of some young ladies, and they're really laying some wood out there.
Yeah, they are.
And they're putting it on some folks.
Right.
And just based on that, now I don't know, I can't put that in the appropriate context, but just based on that little snippet in time, do you see that type of evolution coming?
I would hope to see that they form their own leagues. I would love to see it. It's football.
Yeah,
I would love to see it. I mean, my thing is that, let's face something. Women and men are different in a sense. It's strength. It's just through nature. And that's not to say, now, like I said, women, I don't think women can play men in tennis, although, Billie Jean King, 1973, Bobby Riggs notwithstanding, although Bobby Riggs was an old man, and I'm not going to minimize that because I'm glad she did that. But at the same time, I ain't
gonna lie, Chris. If I stood out there with Coco and she was hitting them 700 mile an hour serves at me, I'd be out there screaming like my sister, because I wouldn't be able to do nothing.
I couldn't. No, you're right. I couldn't do something. I remember I was in high school. I challenged the girl from the girls' basketball team to play. I was in student government, right? And I said, we just do this as an exhibition. She looked at me and said, boy, I'll wear your ass out. And she would have. And she would have, too. So, I mean, she would have worn. I mean, the thing is, basketball is, here's the thing. Ordinary guys can't do what Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. I'm talking about guys. Regular guys who just, who are out there, they can, they might be physical and strong, but in basketball, you got skill. But still, I think the women should have their own league, just like the men do. I don't think, there might be someday a woman that could compete, but I don't think that the women's game should be defined by what the men do. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I like to see the women create their own success, and all that. I want to see, there's nothing wrong. I mean, men and women are physical, and I'm not saying that's not to diminish the ability of women, but to me, I'd rather see women play against other women and whatnot. It's like you wouldn't put a boxing match with, a woman and a man in the ring, although I do know some women would have beat him that wouldn't whoop up on a guy, but in a real sense, let the women have their own form. Let the women, we don't always have to be a part of everything. And just like they're not in our situation, vive la différence, as they say.
Well, I think that I agree. I mean, they should have their own league. For example, on my my additional screen that I have, I type in at YouTube, women football leagues, and I see Lingerie Bowl.
Right.
I don't know if that's still if they still have these leagues or not, but I'm seeing some of the clips and I'm like, okay, they're lingerie, but these girls are hitting hard, they're throwing well, they're catching well. So the lingerie is really not necessary because, put them in regular clothing. they're pretty good. They are knowing how to play, and they're hitting hard too. So again, I'm not sure if this league is still active or maybe defunct, but if they've taken this seriously, they can have an actual football league for women, and I think it would be successful. It just has to take some time.
Guys, what do you think it'll take for the money to be there? Where you'll see like an Angel Reese or a Caitlin Clark or whoever, or Juju, sign for, $30-40 million like you see in the NBA and the NFL and so forth. What do you think it'll take to get to that point?
Probably TV contracts. ESPN, TNT, they're gonna have to step up and sign. And the WNBA and television, they need to get together, because that's a large part of the NBA's revenue. This is TV.
So do you see that happening?
I do, if they want it to happen. I mean, I'll quote a line from Superfly: "You can get it if you want to get it." I mean, you can if they want to do it and whatnot. I think that they can, and I think they should. I do think, like I said again, build on the storylines. Make some of the other teams in the league better. I mean, if they can just. If they can just, just make the game, it seems like there has to be like a competitive playoff series, like a Game 7, kind of like, a rivalry, kind of like, Celtics versus Sixers in the 60s, Lakers versus. There needs to be, you need marquee players, and you need to have that rivalry, whether it's in New York, especially if they come from a city, high market city, a little like, large market areas and whatnot. But, if you can have a compelling series, because somebody has to be like a Boston, there has to be, dare I say, a bad person, a team that everybody hates, like the Celtics. I hate the Celtics. There's a thing. If there's a thing, man, you gotta have like Boston, a Boston and New York team. I'm surprised that the WNBA didn't have a team in Philly and whatnot. And the thing about it, I would love to see a WNBA team in Baltimore, of course, but I want them to have these cities, and like I said, there has to be, you need compelling rivalries, because when Magic and Bird came into the league, the NBA. Oh, and I hate to say it, Dr. T, they surpassed baseball and whatnot because the because the NBA figured out how to market their stars, and if you can do that and everything, and that's where baseball messes up, especially with black kids. I still don't think baseball is boring. I just think there's a perception that the game is slow. But if you watch baseball, man, I mean, World Series time, the Orioles are in it, or the times I've covered the Phillies in it, it's like, you live for every pitch. That's why I don't see why baseball is boring. But going back to this, if the WNBA can market its stars, market its teams, people will watch. Build on the storylines. I just don't like don't get racial about it. Don't get into racial prejudice. But just every now and then have a white girl as a bad guy, or a bad girl or something like that. Make it. You can do these things. Like I say, just eliminate the racism and what was hard to do in this country. But it would be fun to, they have to, if they can take something from the men, find that rivalry and whatnot, get guys to wear t-shirts. But it's also the media too. It's the media in the sense that I asked, I think it was Donna Orenda, who was the former commissioner. And I was like, are you trying to go after, because, on sports talk radio, especially white sports talk radio, they don't get into it. They're very dismissive. I talk about it on my show. I don't talk about it nearly enough as I would like to, but I would like to see them, at the end of the day, really get people talking about it, and that's why you got to have more women. This is why, when you have, I hate, and I'm not doing a plug for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but if you have some women, and not the same old white boys, and have some brothers, and not the same old, have some sisters, and not the same old people, maybe we can get that and get people to talking about that. And I just say that from a media standpoint. It's still, this is still basic. I'm glad, Mike, that you have this, podcast here, because you give us a forum to talk about these things, and I'm especially proud of you for that. And I appreciate being here.
Oh, we're glad to have you.
Chris, you said something funny, regarding race and growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. I can tell you, we hated Chris Lambert, man. We just hated him from Detroit. Yeah. Is that his name? Chris Lambert?
Bill Lambert.
Bill. We hated him. And I think it was an equal opportunity in the NBA at that time where you're right. We hated the Celtics. So, and then we hated Detroit, but going back to the original question, when I was a band director, kids would talk about how can I get into the music business. So I would say, well, in my mind, it's more business music instead of music business, because there's nothing music that we're hearing now. It's all about business and just knowing very little about NBA, but knowing something about business. I don't think they have the revenue to pay these players. And Ryan, you're talking about contracts, and Chris, you're talking about thinking outside of the box. I think that's great, but I don't think these teams have revenues to pay these players like a LeBron James and people like that. So once they get to that place, I can see them getting the same amount of money as men, as they should, because they're as good, as men within that league. But I think it takes time. Kind of, what was going on in the 70s with the NBA, the merger and things like that, and luckily when I was in high school in the 80s, that's where it started to get big, because you have the video game I remember playing, Bird versus Magic. I remember playing that video game, and then obviously Michael coming to Chicago, he had the shoes. And I didn't see it, but now these Georgians are huge. He's making billions out of it, and what 20 years ago. So I think it has to have that evolution to get to that place, and hopefully it would be there. But let's be honest, we talked about Title IX, which is a great law that passed, but we have to understand, are women supporting women in basketball? Because we have our women going to see LeBron or whoever, but are they going to see the women basketball players? And that's the question that I've kind of seen in social media outlets.
Hey, does anybody remember when the NBA was on tape delay for the NBA championship? You remember that?
I do. Yep. I
The
do.
NBA was in a very dark. They went through a very dark period. There was a lot of resentment towards the NBA because there were too many black players. They called it the N-word Basketball Association.
Yep.
Now,
Yeah, I
when
remember
the
that.
NBA and ABA merged, and Dr. J came into the NBA, that was a seminal moment. When Larry Bird and Magic Johnson showed up, that was another seminal moment. The emergence of Michael Jordan. And after that came Kobe, and now we're in the LeBron era. There needs to be a seminal moment in the WNBA that says, we have arrived. So that will attract the sponsors and the networks to start pouring money into the league. And who knows, salaries may start to increase, but they need something. They need an event, something to happen. And I think Reese versus Clark is a godsend for the NBA, for the WNBA.
I think so too, and I think that, like I said, start to distribute the talent around. I mean, I don't like it when one city or team like in the 60s, the Celtics had all the talent and they won everything. But then again, if they had to play in this era where you got all these rounds of the playoffs and everything, and that's the thing. And I think what they have to do now that is just like I was saying earlier, they got to create a rivalry. They got to create a personal rivalry, team a city rivalry. Have cities not liking each other, like Doc Z said. Detroit, Chicago did not like Detroit. Okay, and and definitely Philadelphia. Don't come into the Wells Fargo Center wearing anything Boston and Philly. Don't wear a Cowboys jersey. Don't wear a Cowboys jersey in Philadelphia.
That's a problem, huh?
Okay. Yeah, that will get you killed. or severely whooped or something.
Oh yeah.
And so that's a thing. But still, there's got to be a little bit of rivalry, a little bit of hatred, a little bit of something there and whatnot, and then too, maybe like I say, or just two really good teams that are so good that they can get people to watch. Two teams that go back and forth. One wins one day, one wins 1 year, or just have one team that are kind of like. It's kind of like how the Pistons, they had to go through the Lakers, they had to go through the Celtics, and at the end of the day, it just became a thing where you had to watch. I mean, I'm not a big, I became a Detroit Pistons fan in the 80s because I hate the Celtics and the Lakers and whatnot. So I wanted them because we got, let's face it, be honest, guys. Didn't y'all get kind of sick of the Lakers and the Celtics? Didn't you just, I mean, it's always the Lakers, the Celtics. And I just wanted somebody to win. That's why I love the Sixers when I love Dr. J, because I got tired of the Lakers, got tired of the Celtics, and we need something like that. I mean, it's going to evolve on its own in its own way. It may be something that we're not even seeing by just talking about it right here. So I hope that it does evolve in that regard.
Well, now I got to disagree with you for a little bit, Chris, because I enjoyed the Lakers, man. I used to watch them. I can't lie, they just had an aura, man.
They did.
And we both grew up in Baltimore, and you remember when the Lakers, the Showtime Lakers were together, and they would show the Lakers games. It would come on late at night, around 11 o'clock at night, because the game would be starting around 8 o'clock on the West Coast. And I just thought that was the coolest thing, man, to be able to watch, basketball that late at night. It was just the whole Magic Johnson, Kareem thing that they had going on, man. And I just loved it. And, as opposed to, when I was growing up, when I was a youngster, when everybody was wearing Pro Kids and they had the New York Knicks were the big team, even though we had the Bullets and Wes Unseld and all that kind of stuff, but there was still that aura that the Knicks had and the Celtics, but just certain teams that had that thing that made throughout the years.
That's what the WNBA needs. They need a team,
right,
a polarizing team,
right, that you love or hate.
Exactly. They don't have that yet, so
that's right. That's right. Yeah, I think they're working on it. But, I just hope in the meantime, they will continue to enjoy that success because, for example, the Aces are probably one of the hottest tickets in town right now. Yeah. And when you go to those games, there's so much energy in the place. The music is thumping and people are screaming. They're giving away stuff and, the women are playing ball. And, it's just it's an event.
Yes.
Right.
It really is. So, you just hope that model can be replicated throughout the country so that, all those ladies get that opportunity at endorsements and fame and fortune, within reason.
I would agree with that.
Doc, you got anything for us?
Well, I just trying to remember, growing up, and Chris said something that kind of sparked my entrance. Again, you have the NBA, and it got big in the 80s, and gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember reading about Michael Jordan, and he made what, $800,000 playing for the Bulls, like when he came through. So a lot of the money came from endorsements, and maybe it may the WNBA needs to go through that process, if you will, where we have some of these players that little girls and boys are following, especially with the Final Four that's coming up. So maybe we can say maybe that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are the like Ryan talked about, Larry Bird and the Magic Johnson of this era. And maybe when they get in there and there's some drama, if you will, and hopefully it doesn't get like the that since you like Detroit, Chris, I mean they like to fight in Detroit. I mean, you have people going into stands, even though that was an Indiana person, but maybe we need to see some drama, and regardless that these are female athletes, they the stereotype needs to be pushed away. Girls shouldn't be acting like that type of thing. They're competitors, and they want to win, and they're going to do anything to win and make sure that they bring home the championship.
I would tend to agree with that. I mean, women athletes are always, I'm watching the high school and college basketball. The competition is fierce. They are not playing.
Yep.
They ain't playing. I mean, I've seen them be so competitive that even when the tears come out, that's like, we want to win. That's how badly you want to win. And I've seen that in women's sports. But I want to mention one female athlete who's not in basketball. The one athlete I'm going to be watching this summer is Sha'Carri Richardson. I mean, I wrote something about her last year and how she came back, and she's that person that if we ever cover track and field, we don't cover it for the men in this country and whatnot. She's that person, that person that has that compelling story that's like me against the world. And that's, I think, a lot of women athletes, I like me versus the world and all that, and I think that's a good kind of, if you have to craft a story, that's the story you want to craft.
But again, Chris, it seemed like, I'm not a track and field guy either, but just watching some of the highlights, I mean, she's a great athlete, but they kind of put her through the mud too, because hairstyle. I remember she won a race, and she's like, I'm not talking to you. Went to certain people for the interview, and people calling her rude and things like that. But these are the same people that will just write negativity about her, and not giving her independence.
Right.
But I think from that regard, someone in her team needs to prepare her for that. Because whenever you have a high profile position, whether you are the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, or whether you're the president of a university, or whether you are a Michael Jordan-esque type person, when you're high profile like that, you're going to get those that love you and those that hate you. And I think they're going to have to, folks in her team, going to have to prepare her for that, and how to respond appropriately, but also, how to get her to realize that sometimes that means that you are doing good things. When you have people that are just trashing you every step of the way, that means you're having an impact, and, I just think they need to prepare her for that and not let her get distracted, because the very moment, you get off particularly when you're an athlete, you got to be focused, because I was a track coach, and I know all the focus and preparation it takes, particularly for those sprints. That can be the beginning of the end if your mind isn't right. Because
That's true.
you start letting other people get in your head, and you just, everything, even from your start, can be impacted. You know what I mean? So I just hope that her people will prepare her for what's coming, particularly as the Paris Olympics get closer. She's going to really have to be ready because everybody's looking for her. Everybody's gunning for her. The Jamaican team is looking for her. The media is looking for her. So she's going to have to be ready. She's got a lot, she's got a huge target on her back.
Yep. No doubt about that. I mean, she has a huge target, and you got to be able to, you got to handle it. You got to handle it, and you got to deal with it because, Angel Reese, Emmanuel Ocho chided Angel Reese for crying and talking about how people were trolling her. They said that in sports you're not supposed to cry, but I don't like to say that. For women, that's a different, that's a different kind of thing. And guys are gonna handle it. Guys are gonna be macho and all that. But I think women, when people are trolling her, because he says that people were trolling her, they were sexualizing her and all that. Some of that it's some serious stuff. But you can't. I'm not gonna tell her not to cry about it, but you can't. It's just something that I think sometimes people go too far with that too. So I don't know.
Right, and again, that's where it gets back to your team and folks giving you that support. Again, letting you know these things are going to happen. When you do start receiving that kind of feedback, and it rises to the level of potential criminality, then we're going to go in this direction. You know what I mean? And but certainly you can't chide her for expressing heartfelt emotion.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because when there seems to be different barometers for intensity. And so when someone is that intense about, I am a top tier athlete, and as a result, these are the things that I'm facing. Why are you criticizing her as opposed to another athlete that's interviewed who was angry with his team because his team didn't step up and do what he thought that they were supposed to do? Intensity is intensity. It's going to come in different forms depending on what that information is that the player is dealing with. But again, like you all were saying, Chris and Ryan, you have to let athletes be athletes. As long as they are maintaining those parameters of professionalism, and they're not being disrespectful and discourteous, they're athletes. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be intense. They're going to be emotional.
Right.
Period. So anyway, I get down off my soapbox now. But look, we get to the end of our time, gentlemen. And before we go, we just wanted to give everybody the opportunity to hear what you guys are doing, how they can keep following you guys. And we'll start with you, Ryan. Where can people see you? How can they follow you? And what do you have coming up?
You can find the Beware the Day podcast on YouTube and Instagram. I'm also on Spotify and iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. The best way is just simply go to YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I broadcast live every Friday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's 11:30 Mountain Time, where I am in El Paso. So, it's the Beware the Day podcast. We talk Black history and Black culture.
Very good. Very good. And Chris.
You can find urdradio.com. We stream live on Facebook from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The Chris Murray Report on WURD. I also write for the Philadelphia Sunday Sun. I'm a freelancer there. PhilaSun.com is where you can find some of my articles. And I have a book out and it's called First Draft, a collection of stories chronicling race, sports, and social justice in the 21st century. I'm right now preparing for a book signing. I'm going to be sending stuff out to people and all that because I really wanted to get people to buy the book, but I want to talk to people about it. And I would love to, if at any time, anybody wants to talk, wants to bring me on to talk about that, I'd love to do that. But I'm really learning about the promotion business and whatnot.
Sure.
But the thing is, it's a series of articles that I wrote over the years chronicling race, sports, just some gender issues. I looked at it from the perspective of stop telling Black athletes to shut up and play, but I also talked about it from a standpoint of self-determination. Like, there's articles I've written on Bernard Hopkins, who owned himself as a promoter. I talked about LeBron James and others. And so Reggie Bush, whether or not you should have given back that Heisman. And I talked a lot. And these articles that I've done came from various newspapers, Agrio.com, Philadelphia Tribune, and different places. And some came from my blog. And so from that standpoint, I just wrote a lot of things. These were just columns and stuff because I didn't see anybody else. I was doing a lot of this stuff in the early part of this century before Jemele Hill, Michael Smith, and I love them all to death, but before George Floyd and all that stuff became popular and all that, because a lot of times when you wrote stories about questioning racism in sports and the mainstream, they rarely gave people an opportunity to talk about it. I worked in the Black press and I had that opportunity, so I said, why not put it in the book and kind of to see it as it happened? We're the first draft of history, as newspaper people with this podcast. We are the first draft. People will unearth this podcast and wonder what we were talking about, today, what Dr. T and my man B, where we're getting into. People, sure. We're telling these stories as it exists, and so as it is now. So, it's
gonna have you on as a guest there, Chris. Definitely gonna have you on as a guest to talk about that book for real.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, we certainly appreciate once again, ladies and gentlemen, Chris Murray and Ryan Adams. We certainly appreciate you all coming out and sharing your expertise as always. And gentlemen, we'll be calling you in the future to talk about more sports issues as they develop and just to kind of get your thoughts on things. And as always, we certainly appreciate you giving it to us straight, no chaser. And Dr. T.
Well, Brother B, thank you. Great job hosting today. And I'm going to work on learning some of these players' names, right? The only names that I needed to worry about was Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. Those are the only two names I needed to know. Chris, Ryan, it's good to see you again. And thank you for participating today. And everyone, thank you for listening to Straight No Chaser Talk Radio. Have a good evening.
Appreciate you. Bye.